The Viking Odyssey, From Birth to Decline. The Vikings, often remembered as ruthless warriors and daring explorers, emerged from the northern lands of Scandinavia. Their story begins in the late 8th century, but their influence stretches far beyond their time. To truly understand the Vikings, we must first look at where they came from. Rugged lands filled with fjords, towering mountains, and dense forests. The people of these lands were shaped by their environment, becoming hardy, resourceful, and relentless. Living in small communities, the Vikings farmed, fished, and raised livestock. But the fertile lands of Scandinavia were limited. As their population grew, so did the need for more resources. This scarcity, combined with their unparalleled shipbuilding skills, set the stage for the Viking Age, a time of exploration, conquest, and trade. The first known Viking raid occurred in 793 AD, when Norse warriors attacked the monastery of Lindisfarne off the coast of England. This event shocked the Christian world, as the Vikings plundered treasures and left destruction in their wake. But this was only the beginning. The Viking warriors were fearless, but their society was much more than just battle and blood. At the heart of their communities were their families. Life in Viking society revolved around the longhouse, a large structure that housed extended families, livestock, and food stores. These longhouses were the center of domestic life, where stories were told, meals were shared, and plans for raids or expeditions were made. The women of Viking society were responsible for managing the household, yet their roles extended far beyond that. They could own land, initiate divorce, and were known for their fierce independence. The most iconic aspect of Viking life was undoubtedly their longships. These sleek, wooden vessels were the key to their success. With their shallow draft, longships could sail both the open seas and navigate narrow rivers. This allowed the Vikings to surprise their enemies, attacking from unexpected places. They used the wind and oars to travel vast distances, reaching as far west as Greenland and North America, and as far east as the Byzantine Empire. But while the Vikings are famous for their raids, they were also master traders. They established trade routes that spanned continents, exchanging goods like amber, furs, and iron for luxuries such as silk, spices, and wine. Viking traders traveled across Russia, using rivers to reach the Byzantine Empire and the Caliphate, where they would trade goods and mercenaries. In these far-off lands, Vikings were known as the Varangians, often hired as elite guards due to their reputation as fierce warriors. Back home in Scandinavia, Viking society was governed by a complex system of laws and customs. The Thing, a local assembly, was the cornerstone of Viking justice. Free men would gather at the Thing to settle disputes, discuss important matters, and pass judgments. These assemblies were democratic in nature, with all free men having the right to speak. The law speaker, a respected figure, would recite the laws from memory, as they were not written down. Punishments for breaking the law varied. For smaller offenses, a fine or public shaming might suffice, but for serious crimes like murder, the punishment was often exile or death. In cases of murder, the guilty party could offer virgild, a payment to the victim's family as compensation. This system helped prevent blood feuds, which could tear apart entire communities. While the Vikings were fierce in battle, they were also deeply spiritual. Their gods reflected their values, strength, honor, and wisdom. Odin, the All-Father, was the god of war and wisdom, often depicted as a one-eyed wanderer. His son Thor, the god of thunder, wielded the mighty hammer Mjolnir and protected both gods and men from the chaos of the world. Freya, the goddess of love and fertility, was also a powerful warrior in her own right. Vikings believed that those who died bravely in battle would be taken to Valhalla, where they would feast with Odin and the gods, preparing for the final battle of Ragnarok, when the world would end and be reborn. One strange fact about the Vikings is their burial customs. While some were buried in simple graves, others were given elaborate ship burials. In these ceremonies, the deceased would be placed in a ship along with their most valuable possessions, weapons, and even animals. The ship would then either be set on fire or buried under a mound of earth. These ship burials were reserved for the most honored members of society, such as great warriors and chieftains. Another intriguing fact about the Vikings is their obsession with cleanliness. Despite their fearsome reputation, they were actually quite hygienic for their time. Archaeologists have found combs, razors, and tweezers in Viking graves, showing that grooming was important to them. Saturday was known as Laugardagur, or Washing Day, a tradition that involved bathing at least once a week, something that was uncommon in much of medieval Europe. The Viking Age was not just a time of raiding and conquest, it was also a period of exploration. One of the most famous Viking explorers was Eric the Red, who founded the first Norse settlements in Greenland. His son, Leif Erikson, is credited with being the first European to reach North America, establishing a settlement in Vinland, which is believed to be in modern-day Newfoundland. This discovery occurred nearly 500 years before Christopher Columbus. As the Viking Age progressed, many Norsemen settled in the lands they had once raided. In England, the Vikings established the Danelaw, a region under their control. In France, the Viking leader Rollo was granted land in what became Normandy, in exchange for protecting the kingdom from further raids. Rollo's descendants would later play a major role in European history, most notably William the Conqueror, who became the King of England after his victory at the Battle of Hastings in 1066. The end of the Viking Age came in the 11th century. Several factors contributed to their decline. One of the most significant was the spread of Christianity. As Viking kings converted to Christianity, the old pagan ways began to fade. Churches were built, and the violent raids that had characterized the Viking Age slowed as Europe became more unified under the Christian faith. Another reason for the decline was the rise of stronger centralized kingdoms. Countries like England, France, and Norway developed better defenses, making it harder for the Vikings to raid successfully. Many Vikings chose to settle and integrate into the societies they had once attacked, adopting new ways of life and leaving behind their warrior culture. By the time the 12th century arrived, the Viking Age had come to an end. But their legacy lived on. The Vikings had left a lasting impact on the world through their exploration, trade, and warfare. Their stories, passed down through the sagas, continue to captivate us today. These sagas, written down in the 13th century, preserve the myths, legends, and history of the Viking people. They tell of gods and heroes, of great battles and tragic losses, and of the eternal struggle between order and chaos. One of the most famous Viking legends is that of Ragnar Lothbrok, a legendary warrior king. According to the sagas, Ragnar led numerous raids against England and France and became one of the most feared men of his time. His sons, Bjorn Ironside, Ivar the Boneless, and Sigurd Snake in the Eye, went on to become powerful Viking leaders in their own right, continuing their father's legacy of conquest and exploration. As we reflect on the Viking Age, we see a society that was complex and multifaceted. The Vikings were more than just raiders, they were explorers, traders, craftsmen, and storytellers. They had a deep respect for their gods and ancestors, and valued strength, honor, and loyalty above all else. Their influence can still be felt in modern language, culture, and law. Today, we are fascinated by the Vikings, not only for their martial prowess, but for their adventurous spirit and their ability to thrive in some of the harshest environments on Earth. Their legacy reminds us that history is not just about the powerful empires and grand civilizations, but also about the small communities of people who dared to explore the unknown, who took risks, and who left a mark on the world that will never be forgotten. The Viking ships may no longer sail, but their stories will continue to travel through time, inspiring generations with their tales of courage, exploration, and resilience.